Imagine the moment a mother stands frozen in a supermarket aisle, her hand still clutching a head of lettuce, when a detective's voice on the phone delivers the impossible. After 12 years of silence, the bright yellow Ford Thunderbird her daughter drove away and on her wedding day has been pulled from the black water of the Everglades. No bodies inside. No note. Just the car, algae-draped, mud-caked, license plate still legible, sitting on a flatbed trailer like a ghost dragged back into daylight. For Linda Carroll, those 12 years had been a slow hemorrhage of hope. Birthday cakes baked for no one, an untouched bedroom preserved like a museum exhibit, every telephone ring carrying the cruel possibility of good news that never arrived. Now, in 1997, university students poring over old satellite photographs have spotted a yellow rectangle submerged in a remote slough, coordinates that match no accident site, no logical place a happy couple would drive on their honeymoon. What should have been closure instead opens a wound wider than ever, because a sunken car without bodies raises the darkest question of all. If they didn't drive into the swamp themselves, who put them there, and why? Welcome to today's long-form narrative, The Thunderbird in the Slough, 12 years of silence broken by a satellite eye. This 5-chapter journey weaves real historical patterns of Everglades disappearances, the emotional anatomy of ambiguous loss, philosophical reflections on truth and forgiveness, and targeted English learning tools so you can narrate your own life's hardest chapters with clarity and power. Chapter 1 opens in the fluorescent-lit produce section of the Homestead Walmart on a humid morning in June 1997. Linda Carroll, 56, moves with the mechanical precision of someone who has turned routine into armor. She selects tomatoes by touch, firm but not hard, because focusing on small sensory decisions keeps larger grief at bay. 12 years earlier, on June 29, 1985, her only child Melissa married Brandon Whitmore in a small backyard ceremony Linda had helped decorate with white roses and fairy lights strung between mango trees. Melissa was 24, radiant in an ivory lace dress she'd found on clearance. Brandon, 26, handsome in a rented tuxedo, eyes never leaving his bride. They drove away in the canary yellow Ford Thunderbird Gregory Whitmore had gifted them, waving until the car disappeared around the corner of Southwest 312th Street. They never returned. No credit card charges after the wedding night motel in Key Largo, no sightings at gas stations, no bodies ever recovered. Homestead police initially treated it as a voluntary disappearance, young couple eloping for privacy, perhaps starting fresh somewhere new. Linda never accepted that narrative. She knew her daughter's heart. Melissa had spent her childhood helping Linda balance checkbooks, volunteering at the food bank, singing alto in the church choir. She would never vanish without a goodbye. Historical context sharpens the pain. South Florida in mid-1980s saw a surge in missing persons cases linked to the cocaine trade, Everglades body dumps, and domestic violence that crossed class lines. The National Missing and Unidentified Person System, NAMUS, later cataloged dozens of similar vanishings in the same decade, couples or individuals who drove into the glades and simply ceased to exist in records. Emotionally, Linda lived in a state of suspended animation. She kept Melissa's bedroom exactly as left. Lisa Frank posters curling at the edges, a half-read romance novel spine broken on the nightstand. The Purity Promise ring Brandon had given her still in its velvet box on the dresser. Every Christmas, she baked Melissa's favorite snickerdoodles and set an extra place at the table. Advanced vocabulary, suspended animation, a state of temporary inactivity or hibernation, often used metaphorically for emotional paralysis, captures her daily existence. The idiom, living on borrowed time, describes how she measured years by the absence rather than the passage of time. Philosophical teaching. Viktor Frankl's logotherapy reminds us that meaning can be found even in suffering when we choose our attitude toward unavoidable pain. Linda chose preservation over erasure, keeping the room as a lighthouse for a daughter who might one day sail home. Modern English learning relevance. Ambiguous loss narratives teach past perfect continuous. She had been waiting for 12 years when the call came. Unreal conditionals. If they had called, she would have known. And emotive collocations. Heart-wrenching, soul-crushing, gut-punched. As Linda abandons her cart and races to the Everglades Visitor Center, she feels the old hope and terror collide like storm fronts over the sawgrass prairie. When every sunrise reminds you of a goodbye that never explained itself, how long do you keep the porch light burning before you decide the person you love is never coming home? Chapter 2 centers on the parking lot of Ernest F. Coe Visitor Center, where yellow crime scene tape flutters in the humid breeze and the dripping Thunderbird sits on a flatbed like an artifact dredged from a forgotten era. Linda recognizes it instantly. The dent above the passenger door from the time Melissa backed into a mailbox, the chrome bumper Gregory insisted on polishing weekly. University of Miami Environmental Studies students, analyzing 1985 Landsat imagery for a senior project on wetland loss, spotted the anomalous yellow rectangle in a slough near Long Pine Key. Coordinates fed to Miami-Dade PD triggered sonar sweeps, diver confirmation, and a heavy-lift helicopter extraction. No human remains inside. No bloodstains visible after 12 years of tannic water. Only one item recovered: Brandon's silver lighter engraved with BW to MC, forever. Gregory Whitmore produces his identical lighter, bought as a set in 1984. Historical resonance. Everglades vehicle recoveries are tragically common. Between 1970 and 2000, Florida Fish and Wildlife and National Park Service documented over 140 submerged vehicles containing human remains, many linked to domestic homicides or drug-related executions during the cocaine cowboy era. Emotionally, Linda's mourning swings from fragile hope to shattering rage when Gregory accuses Melissa of connections to gang members from her neighborhood. Vivid character moment. Linda's voice cracks as she defends her daughter. She sang in the church choir. She volunteered at the food bank, while Gregory sneers about poor girls ruining family names. The confrontation escalates until Detective Pram intervenes. Philosophical teaching. Hannah Arendt's banality of evil applies here, not cartoon villainy, but ordinary class prejudice and control scaled up into lethal entitlement. English focus. Reported accusations. He claimed she had gang connections. Contrast clauses. Although the car was found, no bodies were inside. And intensifying adverbs. Fiercely, desperately, bitterly. Idiom. Add insult to injury. Captures Gregory's renewed attack on Melissa's character after the car's recovery. Linda drives home, enters Melissa's preserved bedroom, and begins the painful task of cleaning and boxing belongings, discovering Brandon's items hidden among her daughter's clothes. She packs them separately, drives to the Whitmore estate, and witnesses Gregory's agitation when a keychain marked Otis falls from his pocket. Suspicion ignites. When grief has already stripped you to the bone, what final cruelty does it take before you decide the person who hurt you most no longer deserves the benefit of your silence? Chapter 3 follows Linda's impulsive decision to tail Gregory's Mercedes after witnessing Ray Delane forcibly remove a necklace marked O and S from a nervous young man named Otis. The pursuit leads back into Everglades National Park, down unmarked trails to a limestone ridge in Long Pine Key. Hidden behind sawgrass and boulders, Linda overhears Gregory demand Otis show him exactly where you buried the bitch. Otis points to spot. Gregory offers $300,000 for Otis to confess to both murders and take full blame. Historical parallel. Contract killings and staged disappearances peaked in South Florida during the 1980s cocaine boom. Many cases involved vehicles sunk in remote sloughs to destroy evidence, mirroring the Thunderbird's fate. Emotionally, Linda's terror transforms into cold resolve. She dials Detective Pram, relays coordinates, and waits while police mobilize. Vivid moment. Crouched in the swamp, mosquitoes swarming, she whispers Melissa's childhood prayer, "Keep her safe, Lord," as tears mix with sweat. Philosophical lens. Simone Weil's attention as the rarest form of generosity. Linda gives her full, suffering attention to the truth, refusing to look away even when it destroys her. English learning tools. Overheard dialogue and reported speech. He said he'd pay me $300,000 to confess. Time clauses. After they left, I called the detective. And vocabulary of deception. Orchestrate, collude, perpetrate. Idiom. The jig is up describes the moment Gregory's plan unravels. Caught red-handed fits Otis's confession. Police arrive, secure the scene, locate skeletal remains matching Melissa's description. Gregory attempts to flee. Daniel physically restrains him. Linda watches from a distance as father and son confront each other. Daniel's quiet. You know there's no running from this, carrying more weight than any shout. When you finally hear the confession you've waited 12 years to hear, why does the sound of truth breaking sometimes feel more like a wound reopening than a wound healing? Chapter 4 shifts to the Homestead Police Station booking area, where Gregory Whitmore, once untouchable, stands handcuffed while officers catalog his belongings, including the keychain marked Otis. Otis Dunhall, Ray Delane's son, waves counsel long enough to give a recorded statement. Gregory hired him in spring 1985 to seduce Melissa and fracture Brandon's engagement. When that failed and the couple eloped, Gregory escalated, ordering Ray and Otis to ambush them at their honeymoon cottage in Dania Beach. Brandon returned early, discovered Ray assaulting Melissa's already dead body, fought back. Both young people were killed, bodies buried in Long Pine Key, car sunk in a deep slough Gregory knew from hunting trips. Historical element. 1980s South Florida domestic homicides frequently involved staged accidents or Everglades disposals. The cocaine cowboy era normalized violence among affluent families, protecting reputation and assets. Emotionally, Linda sits in an interview room giving her statement while Eleanor Whitmore collapses in the next room upon learning her husband murdered their son. Vivid scene. Eleanor enters Linda's room, kneels and whispers, "I'm so sorry for everything he did to your girl, to our boy, to you." Linda helps her stand. Two mothers embrace across 12 years of manufactured enmity. Philosophical teaching. Hannah Arendt again. Evil becomes banal when people prioritize image over conscience. English focus. Sequencing past events. First he hired Otis, then he ordered the ambush. Passive voice for agency avoidance. The bodies were buried, and hedging in witness accounts, he appeared to be angry. It seemed like a threat. Idiom. Skeletons in the closet, literalized by the hidden urn. The truth will out, describes the slow unraveling. As forensics confirm identities via dental records and DNA, Linda requests Melissa's remains for a proper burial. When two families shattered by the same man finally stand in the same room, what does forgiveness look like when the wound is shared, but the guilt is not? Chapter 5 closes on a quiet September morning in 1997 at a small cemetery outside Homestead. Linda, now 56 but carrying herself with new stillness, places white roses on Melissa's grave beside a matching headstone for Brandon. Eleanor and Daniel stand nearby. Gregory is in county jail awaiting trial on 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, evidence tampering. The Everglades case, once a cold missing persons file, has become front-page news, sparking renewed calls for better satellite monitoring of sensitive wetlands and tougher oversight of private land use in national parks. Emotionally, Linda and Eleanor meet weekly for coffee, sharing memories instead of accusations. Daniel quietly funds a scholarship in Melissa and Brandon's names at the local community college. Vivid moment. Linda scatters wildflower seeds over the graves, whispering, "You loved each other enough to choose each other over everything else. That's the only legacy that matters." Philosophical closure. Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching on interbeing. Nothing exists in isolation. Even profound loss connects us to others who suffer similarly, and from that connection, healing grows. Modern English relevance. Resolution narratives teach future perfect for closure. By next spring we will have planted a garden here. Modal verbs of acceptance. We may never understand why, but we can choose how to live now. And reflective structures. Looking back, I realize grief was never the absence of love. It was love with nowhere to go. Universal wisdom. Truth does not erase pain, but it stops pain from poisoning the future. As Linda walks away from the graves hand in hand with Eleanor, the sawgrass prairie stretches toward the horizon, vast and indifferent, yet no longer hiding secrets. In the end, the deepest healing is not forgetting what was taken. It is learning to carry what remains with tenderness instead of rage. What will you choose to plant on the ground where your own hardest story once stood?